Hello, hello, my lovely seekers and finders. Welcome to the Way of Truth number 41. My name is Artem Boycev. This is my website. So, for those of you who are new here to the broadcast, please free to check it out. I am a spiritual teacher. I help people on the path to enlightenment, liberation, moksha, nirvana, however you may put it. And in this broadcast, we speak about all matters of the spiritual path. We talk about the process of unfolding of the dream. I speak with my students, I give guidance and advice, and people share the stories also. So if you're new here, welcome. Please, if you wish to participate in the broadcast, then follow the StreamYard link, which is posted to the description of the video on YouTube and Facebook, and I just posted it as comments. So this is the link. It's posted to the comment section of both Facebook and YouTube. We're also broadcasting on Twitter now again. And that would be the best way to actually participate. So I highly encourage everyone to speak in person. There's a tremendous amount of undervaluing the intimacy of communication in modern day spirituality. So a video conversation is much better than text, and in person, it's a totally different game. So, but if for whatever reason you're just watching, you joined, you don't want to do that, or you have concerns about your anonymity or identity, then you can post your question to either Facebook or YouTube, and I'll bring it on screen, read it if the time allows, and address it. So yeah, that's it for the introduction. It's always quite similar. So without further ado, let's see. We have a couple of guests now in the studio, which followed this link that I mentioned before. And I will start with Kaspar. I will bring Kaspar on stage now. Hi.
Hey, Artem.
Hi.
Pleasure talking to you. That was
Good talking to you too.
highly unexpected to be in there so quick. So,
Oh, yeah, you were the first. Yeah.
yeah, great.
It
Thank you.
doesn't tell you the your order, right, in the guest room.
No, I had no clue. Like, so what a nice surprise. Well, thanks for having me.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah. Um, well, so I've been thinking about my question, and I think they're wrapped up two questions into each other, and there are two different processes going on in my spiritual path now for a while in my life. I'm 35 years old now, and I've been on the path, you could say, well, it's hard to say really, in a way, since I'm 17 years old, but then in another way, since I'm about 21 years old, when I had a very strong depression due to major confusions, major fear psychosis, and just a really mixed up
Very
mind
common. Yeah.
energy. um, so part of my process over the years has been a lot of grieving, and so that's one part of my question. So my heart space has been grieving so much, and I've just, whenever I really connect with my heart or go into deeper states of stillness, there's just tears instantly running down my cheeks. And it's just, it feels like it's never ending.
Yeah.
And I don't even
Listen,
know what I'm grieving for so much. Sometimes there's like themes popping up in my awareness that could be connected to this grieving, but I'm just wondering, like, I think that's my first question would be like, am I gonna grieve for the rest of my life? You know, just
okay, I see.
years, wherever.
So the
Yeah,
question is, does it ever end, basically?
right. In a way, and what was your process? Did you experience something?
Very much the same, my
Yeah,
friend. Very much the same. So it is a grieving process. It always is,
right.
actually. Uh, Osho said once, only the eyes full of tears can see the truth.
Hmm.
And I concur.
Yeah.
You can look at it in different ways. You could look at it from the perspective of the ego and say that for the ego, enlightenment is death. And all attachments disappear ultimately. You will not be able to hold on to anything, right? If we're talking about death, then you're not going to be able to take your loved ones there. You're not going to be able to take your money there. You're not anything that you achieved
Yeah.
will be erased.
Right.
So that is a very sad proposition. Because
Right.
we always want to hold on, just to realize that no one, however dear they are to us, are going to be with us forever
Right.
is very sad.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's like a funeral for everybody.
Right. Yeah.
And then also to realize the same about yourself,
Yeah.
that you are not going to be here forever,
Yeah.
is even more sad.
Right.
But it's also that realization which gives birth to the ultimate flowering of appreciation and honoring and uh, preciousness of life.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
So if you look at it from this perspective, we can also look at it from the perspective of trauma and health, right? We can say that a healthy animal, a healthy being, has never forgotten that, and uh, the tears that we experience on the spiritual path is the accumulation of all the uncried tears
Yeah.
from mistreatment.
Right.
Because in forgetting that, we mistreat each other by
Yeah.
putting the things that don't matter over the things that do matter. By
That's
putting artificial appearances
yeah.
and some artificial rituals above bodily autonomy, for example, or health,
Mm.
putting ideas of honor uh, or I forgot the word, obedience. What's the word that I was looking for? Shit, I forgot.
Discipline or
No, the loyalty. Yes,
yeah.
loyalty to family, nation,
Yeah.
tribe.
Right.
Above kindness, above uh, our physical health, about our life. Oftentimes, even, right? How else would you justify being happy by going to war or
Right.
proud?
Yeah.
So in forgetting that, we start seeing the world upside down, uh, and mistreat each other. So we can also say that a healthy individual never has forgotten that, and but since we're conditioned from the very, very early childhood to conform to these crazy ideas, then we accumulate a lot of grief as a reaction, as a forbidden reaction, because we're scared to show it, to
Right.
mistreatment of society. So from that perspective, you can say that these are delayed tears. These are
Yeah.
the tears that you were supposed to cry
Right.
long, over the course of those, when you were dreaming and suppressing all of this, is pretending.
Right.
That's what you were supposed to cry.
Yeah.
So to the second part of your question,
Hmm.
it cannot be endless, actually.
Mm.
So it does seem endless.
Mm.
uh, that is the trick of that's the trick of the mind.
Mm.
So the mind is a very clever thing, right? It's a curious, clever beast. It
Yeah.
will absolutely come up with all sorts of things that sound logical
Mm.
in order to avoid the deeper pain. And uh, so this is a lot of things. Like, for example, that to justify that we shouldn't feel it. One of it is that it's gonna last this way forever. Right? Some others are, I cannot take it. It's unbearable. Nothing is worse than this. It's going to last forever. There's no use in it. It's only going to get worse. Like lots of things that sound believable when you hear it, but it cannot be true, and it's actually logically cannot be true, right? The very fact that uh, that we're dealing with conditioning, so basically unprocessed reaction, unprocessed responses to abuse and mistreatment, uh, that are that have been accumulated since our birth, it means that the amount of this condition is finite.
Yeah.
Love to yourself is infinite because love to yourself is the very foundation of your existence. You know, every living being is infinitely in love with itself. That's the foundation of life. That's what life is. That's why we have a survivor instinct. Uh, but the amount of conditioning and conditioning of falsehoods, right? Those are lies. So lies had to be instilled somehow in your mind with violence, threats of withdrawal of love, abuse, mistreatment. So you were basically told behave this way, and then you forgot that you were just told that, and it became yours. You internalize it. So conditioning is based on self-deceit. So we're literally dealing with self-deceit here. The amount of self-deceit cannot be infinite. It is finite. The amount of lies that you're telling to yourself in your mind is finite. So consciousness is infinite, you can say. Life is infinite. The beauty is infinite. The complexity of the universe is infinite, but not the ego. The ego is finite, right? So the ego is a conglomeration of all of the false beliefs and conditionings. And so even the teachers who would say that it's an infinite journey, it never ends, there's always learning. Sure, you can say that the brain, for example, continues to learn until you die, or you can even make it a little bit less broad and say that even the spiritual journey continues infinitely. But even those teachers would say that there is a kind of that there is a point up to which it becomes easier and easier and easier. So that's also an indication that it's finite.
Right.
So you can look at the state of the unconditioned mind as a sort of an asymptote, right? And then after the enlightenment, as you work through more and more, it kind of slowly approaches the asymptote. You can say that it never hits it. It actually doesn't matter. But what does matter is that it's reported again and again and again, but everyone, including the teachers who say it's an infinite journey, that the peace grows and the suffering diminishes.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
can
that's
actually,
what I experienced. Yeah.
so you can actually extrapolate it and say that yes, there is a point where it hits zero. It's just that like most people probably never reach it during their lifetime, but there is a peak of it, and then there is a subsequent reduction, and it gets less and less and less. The thing about it though is that almost every issue that you have to deal with, it does tend to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
Everything, right? So like for example, if you were sensitive to, let's say, rejection from the opposite gender, let's say, or something
Right.
like that. So before it stops being an issue, you will get exposed to all the pain that arises in you
Yeah.
on these events in a very direct way. So it will feel like it is new pain. It's actually not, but it will feel like these are like the amounts of pain that you did not feel before. So the same thing can be said about the enlightenment process. It's the same arc. It's always the same structure, right? So you live in denial and in suppression, and you don't feel much. Then you start getting exposed to it, and it goes up, 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 and then after some crescendo, after some peak of it, you have accepted, you have felt enough, you have dropped enough of falsehoods, and it starts going
All
down,
right.
down, down. And it's the same arc, actually. It's the same trajectory with that you can even observe in meditation. You can observe it on psychedelic trips.
Yeah.
So it's like, for example, you're starting to deal with something difficult in meditation, then it intensifies, 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 but you're staying with it, staying with it, staying with it. And then at some point, after acceptance, it starts slowly diminishing and it dissolves. And so it's the same arc about this whole process. The difference, though, is that the process takes years, and it's very difficult to kind of see it this way when something becomes worse and something becomes very painful. And it's very
Yeah.
difficult to kind of keep this perspective of that, okay, so this thing is going to get much worse,
Yeah.
but then like maybe a month from now, or like some time from now, it will also get much better. And the same can be said about the other things, myriads of other things. And then there's the overall process that I'm going through that is following the same arc, right?
Right.
So that is why I say to most people, don't even try to evaluate your position, so to say, on the spiritual path by how you're feeling today. Don't even try.
Right.
You know,
Right.
even by how you're feeling a week ago. You know, even a month ago. Look at a year ago. Look at a few years ago. Are you maybe you're crying right now and weeping in grief, but compared to a few years ago, this is your general day-to-day uh, uh, experience, is it devoid of some things, or at least not as intense, that you've been struggling with, that you had been struggling with a lot in the present? If it is, then you cannot say that everything is going to be worse or everything is horrible. Like, it's obvious that some things, and this is how you know that it's not really a completely infinite journey into suffering.
Yeah.
It's not. uh, and another kind of advice or perspective shift that I can offer is that, to kind of placate the mind, is that if it feels on the level of the mind that it's going to be infinite, right? If the mind says, okay, so this is going to be infinite suffering, I'm always going to be like that. Well, you can say, well, if that is true, then we might as well get used to it, right? Like, we have no choice. Like, okay, so
Right.
I'm always going to cry. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to cry like a baby until I'm dead. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, what can I do about it? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing, right?
Well, good thing is I feel better after crying anyway. So
Exactly. And the whole process of the unfolding of the dream is of the same structure. It just takes place on a different time scale. So
mm,
it's difficult to see it clearly. But after a good cry, yeah, you do feel better. Of
yeah.
course, of course. All emotional release leads to greater
Right.
uh, lightness and clarity
It
ultimately.
does. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Um, well, what's interesting is parallel to that more emotional heart space kind of process. About after 2 years of meditation in my early 20s, intense meditation. Like I literally meditated sometimes 2 9 hours a day just to really be able to calm my mind because my mind was so out there. Um, I started experiencing what are now I know Kundalini Kriyas or something they're called. Very intense Kundalini twitches, twists, and just the most intense muscle spasms and all sorts of things. And at the time, I had no idea what it was. I was just really, really just estranged by what was going on with my body. Later education taught me that it's part of the process of
Yeah.
integrating higher consciousness. And just, I'm curious. So there have been times where it was more intense and times there where it was more in the background, but have you experienced these super intense Kundalini things going on as well?
Tons.
Yeah, because I mean, they have been sometimes I've just screamed like felt like a dragon was screaming out of my body. It was just so intense. It just happened to me. It wasn't anything I tried to do or anything. And I'm just puzzled by the intensity of it and just more curious about what your experiences with this side of
I,
awakening.
I can't even begin to uh, describe it because there are lots of it in all sorts of things.
Okay.
So it would be easier, like, if you said, like, this is what I experienced, have you experienced that? Because the list is just so
Okay.
huge, right? So that, of course, all sorts of twitching and twerking and different energies and thermal dysregulation and
Yeah.
cold flashes, uh, cold sweat filled
Yeah.
nights, sweating, shaking,
Okay.
nausea,
Yeah.
all sorts of things. So it is, yes, it is very surprising how intense, right? And also, this is a side this is a mirror image of how much conditioning we actually have.
Yeah.
So the intensity of the process of coming back home
Yeah.
is a testament to how much uh, undenied, unresolved suffering the
Yeah.
nervous system habitually carries.
Yeah.
So yes, a completely healthy body is a huge departure from what is considered the norm in our
Yeah.
society. So it's a very also bodily process. It's a very physical
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
So it
That's right.
feels very intense in the body, all sorts of strange energies and twerking, and sometimes involuntary
Yeah.
movements, and all sorts of emotional inner reactions and processes can happen, like inner despair, like you may even like taking a walk, and everything is fine and you might even enjoy it on some level, but then you also realize that something inside you is like crying or screaming or weeping.
Yeah.
Lots of very very weird and intense things that
Yeah.
happen on this journey. So
Okay.
like this is probably one of the kind of most frequent ways in which people approach me, like, so I'm
Oh,
experiencing this and this, and it's very
okay.
uncomfortable, I'm scared, I just want to know if it's normal.
Right.
And
Yeah, because I haven't heard many teachers talk about these processes so much. And I think partially what attracted me to your teachings was just your very genuine sharing of your emotional the emotional and the very energetic things going on with yourself, the whole purging sort of process that's going on.
yes, it's actually the bulk of the process. I mean, the reason that not many teachers talk about it, I mean, maybe there are some like highly realized, highly equanimous teachers who talk about it privately in
Yeah.
their private setting, but don't talk about it publicly because
Right.
they don't want to, like, scare people away. But I
Right.
think it's an exception. I think that in reality, the reason that most teachers don't talk about it is that simply most teachers did not go to this process to sufficient level where it is seen that that's actually the bulk of the process. So that's why, when I say that enlightenment is pretty much completely emotionless state, not completely, but almost completely, I'm very rarely agreed with. And the depth of egoic suffering is extraordinarily easy to underestimate. And I mean, like, when I myself, when I was self-realized, so I was already in a very kind of highly exalted state of consciousness. So I was blissful 24/7, but it was still, I had no idea yet how much emotional suffering and how much of the bodily work is still ahead of me. And that's why psychedelics is such a good tool and such a good test also. And generally speaking, emotion is the bulk, is pretty much the only energy that you can work with. It's the bulk of suffering, is the emotional energy. The bodily energy that comes, blissful, very intense, is actually also a mirror side of dropping out
Yeah.
of the emotional energy. It's the mirror side of the relaxation of the emotional pain. The emotional pain is tied to all sorts of bodily tension. So that's actually the bulk of the spiritual work. I mean, believe it or not, the difference between somebody who is in self-realized state, as I call it, self-realized state, so disidentified with the ego, identified as consciousness, the difference between someone like that and someone who could be completely identified with the ego, and so we would say like dreaming, and the difference between this self-realized person and someone who I would call more or less, completely enlightened, the latter difference is actually much larger.
Hmm.
So the that's why I think it's rarely talked about.
Hmm.
I also had the same illusion. So like when I disidentified with the ego in a permanent way, it doesn't mean there was no ego back then, but it disidentified with a person in a permanent, abiding way. I had a very strong illusion that this is just something that you can kind of get, and that's the most important thing to get, and that's it, and that's the end of suffering. And I think this is the illusion that most spirituality is taught from. Later, I changed my position on that. So because as the journey actually continued and there was more and more emotional work, now to me it's obvious that it is strictly my readiness for what followed and my emotional maturity back then and my uh, sufficiently loosened resistance to difficult emotion that happened by that time, that was precisely what even allowed the process of disidentification of the ego to take place, and everything that happened before that, including my depressions and struggle and despair before that, while I was still identified with the ego, also needed to happen. So it's all about it, it's the process is all about dissolving the resistance to difficult emotional experience, and it's a very bodily, very physical process.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And the beautiful distractions everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you. That really helps. I feel much more understood, and yeah,
I'm glad
it's
to be of
great
help.
to feel that way. Thank you so much. I think you're a wonderful teacher,
Well,
and
thank you. I
I've
appreciate it.
looked at many teachings over the years, and when I saw your stuff, I knew that's the guy.
Yeah,
That's really there's just a lot of depth and wisdom there. So thank you so much.
thank you, my friend. Thank you for
Yeah,
your kind words. Thank you.
thank
I'm
you.
very glad that I could be of help, and I
Yeah,
hope to see you again.
yeah.
Thank you.
Hope so too.
Bye bye.
Bye.
All right. Okay, so that was Casper. So the next one we have Kevin. Hi, Kevin. How are
Hi,
you? Good to
good.
see
How are
you.
you? Good to see
Good.
you. So I might have to dip out pretty soon. But uh, I I basically had like the question we talked about in this in our session.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of just to put my thoughts out there. I've been reading a lot about money and uh, Bitcoin and the in inflation and then I've noticed I feel like greed and like a lot of emotional states are tied into money. Like I look at my bank account, if it's overdrawn, I'm like feeling bad. If it's really high, I'm feeling really good. But it's all just it's like just numbers on a screen. And like I've traded like options a few times in the stock market, and that's cool. But it's just money. It's just like numbers on a screen, and like it's like not real. But I have such an emotional reaction to it, and some people have a very emotional reaction in terms of like gambling their life savings away, and they're just taken over by greed. And then seems like our monetary system is just printing money, kicking the can down the road, and then Bitcoin comes along, and it seems like the magic solution to all this. And I don't know, that I just, there's so much I don't understand about it. And yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on all that.
Uh, Money is a large topic, actually. Yeah, we can talk about it a lot. So people have very different relationship to money. It's a proxy measure for status, for pleasure, but I think one of the deepest relationships to money that people have is security. So, so it is just numbers on the screen if we're talking about someone who has, like $5 million versus $10 million. But for a lot of people, because our society is structured this way, that everything is sold, and it was very difficult to actually find help without giving anything in return. We have such a minuscule share of our society that is dedicated to helping people without getting paid. That in a society like this, money literally becomes the tool of survival. Well, of course, you actually don't have to have a lot of money to survive. So, the unhealthy relationship to money is a kind of exacerbation of this view of money as security. Just like pretty much every egoic suffering and attachments and struggles are a tremendous exacerbation of something that has some truth to it, right? So in this society, money does ensure survival in one way or the other, but the relationship to money of most people, even from this perspective, is the exacerbation of it. And then, of course, there are other aspects of relationship to money. So the status, being seen as successful, distractions, pleasure, shopping. Like, for example, our shopping addiction. Our society is addicted to consumption. That's mostly a distraction. So you buy something, and I have experienced that myself. So I know what I'm talking about. Like you buy something new, and then you feel good. I mean, almost everyone knows that. Almost everyone is exposed to that. So you buy something new and you feel good for a little while, right? And then it passes away, and then you want to buy something new, and it gives you this kind of very fleeting feeling of happiness, very kind of fleeting feeling of you moving up somewhere, and this can be very addictive too. So we can talk about the ego as this like tremendous exaggerations of something that is true, and the relationship to money is one of them. A good way to think about money that I realized myself, actually, even like before all the spiritual things that happened when I was like about 35 or something. Money can be thought about as a claim to labor. So it's a debt that society accepts towards you, basically. And I mean, because in this society you almost you need to pay for everything, then of course, if your debt is negative, then it is somewhat threatening. But generally speaking, that's what it is. It's a claim to labor. So if you have like a certain amount of money and you go out and spend it, what are you doing? You're basically saying that I commission you or some other people to create this product or service and give it to me. I mean, most of the time when we're speaking about modern economy, it's already been created. So it's just a question of releasing it to you. But generally speaking, that's what it is, right? So if you're like a billionaire and you buy a $10 million yacht, then you basically commission thousands of people to invest their effort, labor, of course, materials, but materials without human labor doesn't amount to anything. I mean, you have to extract them, you have to process them, and create something for your consumption, and then give it to you. And so, from that perspective, interestingly enough, the amount of claim to labor that you have does not itself mean anything. So claim to labor is the ability to direct the efforts of other human beings. So that is power. So that's why money is power. It's not a direct form of power, but it's just like as threat of violence. But it's a power in a sense that for as long as everybody's playing by this game, you can direct efforts of individuals or groups of individuals. And sometimes if you buy a building or a yacht, then a very large groups of individuals. It depends on the amount of spending. If you own a huge company, then a very large group of individuals. So you're directing efforts of very large of a certain number of individuals into a certain activity. So that's a very direct form of power. So the amount of it doesn't matter as much as what you use it for, actually. So that's why, strictly speaking, the tax on consumption would actually be much better than the tax on income, because when you're consuming something for yourself, you are always directing an effort of a group of individuals towards your own benefit. Whereas if you're just managing something, like for example, if you own a large corporation which you manage, you do have control over what it does, and it could be for your own benefit, it could be for someone else's benefit, it could be for the combined benefit of everybody. Unfortunately, it is very rarely this way. I mean, mostly it's for profit, and it's codified in our laws, actually, that the for-profit corporation has to put profits above pretty much anything else. But strictly speaking, the way that you direct efforts of other individuals, it can be beneficial, it can be benevolent, or it can be very selfish, it can be destructive. It can be very competitive. It can be your selfish values or profits above well-being of other individuals. So power in itself can lead to good outcomes and bad outcomes. And unfortunately, because we live in a world which is very, very selfish, it is much more often leads to bad outcomes. I mean, that is why power needs to be checked. That's why, for as long as if we don't put checks on power, it very quickly goes out of control. And one way to check power of money is to limit the extent of its power, which leads to some, socialistic ideas, which are actually very correct ideas. So the interesting thing about, for example, USSR or the Soviet Union, it can hardly be called a socialist country. There's pretty much no country that claimed the title socialist that was truly socialist. I mean, if you look at their economic system, and it's government capitalism. It's not socialism. Socialism is when the organization belongs to the workers of the organization. directly. So if you like have an organization where 100 people work, then they collectively govern it. So it's the same idea that we think is totally okay in politics, but applies to the economic sphere, right? If you have like a town with 1,000 people, then they collectively elect a mayor and govern themselves. So if you have a company where 1,000 workers work, then they collectively elect a manager and govern themselves. That's actually socialism, right? In the Soviet Union, everything belonged to the government, managed by the elite nomenclature class. So that's why, practically speaking, there were even much less economic freedoms in Soviet Union under, like, presumably socialism than, let's say, in the capitalist America. Because if you really compare it to capitalist America, it's like just one huge corporation called the Soviet government, and then everyone is their workers, and they can, so just like in a corporation, if you want to change departments, your boss can deny it. In Soviet Union, you kind of had to ask for permission to change jobs. So it's the same. It's the same idea. Like if every employer is government, then you're basically working for one employer, different branches, basically. So it was as far from socialism as you can imagine. It was actually further away from socialism than the United States. So I think you also mentioned inflation in Bitcoin. I mean, again, I'm not an economist, so I'm just sharing some observation. I think that I responded to you back then in the Discord about inflation. Inflation, like printing money, the case in economics is an ingenious way to maximize velocity of money, basically. Because if you in an inflationary climate, if you do not spend, it is very, very difficult to save. So you actually have to invest, make profits, and pay the tax on your profits in order to stay even, in order for the purchasing power of your money to stay the same.
Quick question on that.
There's a hidden tax. There's a hidden tax on savings, basically. Yes.
Just a quick question on that was, it sounds like a good thing that we have that, but then I think to myself, in the system, in the monetary system we have now, you have to do that because deflation would destroy the whole system. But without the Fed and without the potentially infinite printing of money, and we had a gold standard or something like that, maybe that would be better. I really don't know because we haven't done that in like 100 years.
It depends on how we measure better. Like if we measure our progress by GDP, basically. So if we measure our progress by the amount of goods that we produce and the purely material comfort and material wealth, which led also to the destruction of the ecological destruction of our habitat. So it's actually such a bad idea that when we implemented it on scale, measuring our progress strictly as material wealth, then we ran into conflict with Mother Nature itself. So if you measure it this way, then yes, of course, some inflation is actually a very good idea because maximizing the velocity of money is what you want. Because in this environment, you want to maximize production, you want to maximize competition, you want to make sure that every money works, that that everything is set to some productive use, right? So if someone in that system, if you're just sitting on like $5 million in cash, you're not actively contributing to. You sort of took some of the oil that kind of oils the machine away. You see, because you could have invested it, you could have loaned it, you could have given it to somebody who would then use it to hire. So you could kind of temporarily loan the power, the that you're hoarding to someone else who could then use this power to employ more people and then create more product. So you do want that in an economy which is set to maximize the people's participation, regardless of how it affects their well-being. That's why it's a rat race. No one's happy. To maximize people's participation in production. But that's actually an absurd way to look at an economic system, because it's an economic system that is kind of maximizing itself. If economy is a tool, then we need to ask ourselves, what do we want this tool to accomplish? And do we want this tool to increase the amount of products and stuff, regardless of how people feel? Or do we want this tool to maximize people's well-being, to maximize people's happiness? And from that perspective, if you really look at maximizing people's well-being, I'm not sure to what extent deflationary environment is dangerous. I would like to hear specific arguments against it, but I'm not sure to what degree it's dangerous.
For sure. Yeah, I got to do a ton more reading. I'm really into this right now, but I probably got to get going. And I want to give other people time, so we're not talking about inflation for a spiritual talk.
No,
But
those are interesting topics, and they do come up a lot. And I'm grateful for you to bring them up. I would love to hear other people also talk about it. I would love to hear different arguments for and against. I mean, I myself was lucky because I kind of had the privilege or the misfortune, depending on how you look at it, because it wasn't easy at all. But to witness both the late Soviet system. So the Soviet system collapsed when I was 13. Then I lived through the kind of a Wild West capitalism, the formation of the capitalism, which is almost always done with a lot of crime. You know how they say behind every big fortune there's some crime. So in the 90s, the early formation of the capitalist system in Russia was very hectic and crime ridden, and there was nothing fair about that. And then I got to nothing fair nor beautiful. It was very ugly. And then I got to live in a kind of a developed capitalist system. So I can compare the both pros and cons, and I also read a lot about this system. So it's an interesting topic, and I appreciate your question, and I welcome questions, discussions, and point about this. Talking about politics, economy, society can also sharpen the mind, because there is very rarely the right answer to everything. Like, for example, what they tried to do in Russia is they actually tried to take a society which was very brutal as a result of Tsarism, very, very brutal society, and kind of jump over the necessary stage of individualization and people being able to pursue their own interests, people exercising the beginning of their freedom, and jump over that into the collective society. So what they ended up with is a version of forced altruism, right? So everyone actually wanted to leave after years and years of very brutal oppression. People wanted at least some degree of freedom, right? And then instead, they were told, okay, we're all, we must call each other comrades. We're all like big collective. And if you deviate from that, and if you show selfish character traits, let's say, that we're going to shame you, we're going to persecute you, we're also going to introduce laws that it will also be illegal. And so that is also why when the Soviet Union collapsed and this kind of forced altruism collapsed, it became so ugly, because everything, all of this like very deeply suppressed yearning for selfishness, status, riches, and everything that they also saw on the other side of the TV screen from Hollywood movies, it all erupted in such a tremendous display that it was very, very ugly. Like people became very, very ugly. So in some ways, Marx, when he wrote about capitalism, socialism, and communism, he actually correctly predicted the evolution of human consciousness. But I don't know if he meant, if he also overlooked it, or he actually didn't mean that it cannot be enforced by law and force. So we need to evolve our way out of selfishness on the level of each individual. If we just try to create the society that is altruistic, so to speak, and then create a ideology about that, which is what Soviet Union tried to do, and enforce it by threat of violence and by law, then it's only going to be a step backwards, unfortunately.
Definitely. Cool, man. Well, thank you very much, and I'll see you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, so we have some. Okay, so I would like to ask the viewers, if you like this video, please comment, subscribe to my channel, please, and share this video if you like it. I've got a bunch of other videos on my channel, and if you like them, please take a look. Also, like, subscribe, and share. And I would also ask you to support our work. If you like our videos, if you like our content, if you would like to us to create more videos like this, please go to this page, and you can support me on Patreon. I haven't checked. I wanted to check, but I forgot. I think I have about $230 right now a month on Patreon. The goal is $300. So help me get to $300 a month in donations on Patreon. And you can also other than Patreon, you can also submit PayPal donations. So please, if you can afford it, even like something like $1, $2, $5, it doesn't really matter. But if you can afford it, please support me on Patreon. I'm also inviting you to join our communities. We have a wonderful Discord community where people help each other on the spiritual path. That's the link. So it is still open. You just have to make sure that you use a real name, and not the last name. The last name doesn't have to be real, but the first name and the real picture, because we strive to be a community of real people. We speak to each other over video. We have retreats. We see each other in real life. So it's not an anonymous internet community, but it's a very supportive community. If you're undergoing the spiritual transformation, you will find support there. And then finally, I'm also going to post a link here. If you wish to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me, you just go to this link. It's also from my website. There are multiple paid options with different tiers for people with different income, including some free option and very cheap options. So please, if you wish to speak to me, we can do a bunch of things like guided meditations and other exercises. And please select the appropriate tier for income, and I can help you directly. All right. So I still have about 15-20 minutes, and I have two guests. I have Megana and Max waiting. but I would like to take a look at some of the questions quickly that were submitted. Okay, Gabriel Shirley says, "Hi, Artem, I guess. I'm reading Nonviolent Communication. I'm curious. What is your view on needs? How would you define them? And does an enlightened person have emotional relational needs? Thank you." Okay, well, this is a great question. Yes, ultimately, in the ultimate reality, you don't have emotional needs. The emotional needs that nonviolent communication is focusing on is suffering. But I do recommend, and I will continue to recommend, nonviolent communication as a great method of practice. And I even kind of called it enlightenment light before. I think I also called stoicism enlightenment light. There's like a bunch of methods and techniques that I called enlightenment light. And the reason that I did that is because nonviolent communication, if you practice it correctly, is going to launch you into introspection. So it's going to deepen you on the spiritual path by the virtue of making you look into what it is you're actually asking of another person. So it's a tool. You see, so the ego's relationship to other people is very manipulative. So you feel something, or you want to feel something, but you don't want to ask about it, ask for it directly. You don't want to admit to it, and you don't want to ask for it directly. So the nonviolent communications teaches you to do just that. It teaches you to look honestly and openly and admit not only to yourself, but to another person, which is harder, what it is that you're feeling, and ask also openly, directly, what you want from another person, instead of trying to hide what you're feeling and manipulate them somehow so that they make you feel a certain way. So this is a much more honest approach. So it's kind of like radical honesty. Honesty and self-honesty is extraordinarily difficult. Is extraordinarily important. You can say that the whole spiritual path is about self-honesty. So this way of relating and of communication, just like meditation forces you into self reflection by the virtue of ridding you of all distractions, this method forces you into self reflection by the virtue of forbidding you manipulation and lies. So you have to be honest to the extent that you can about your emotional experience and about what you want to another person. That's why sometimes it's very awkward to start, because we're not used to be talking about ourselves in this way. Like love is just some fluffy feeling. Love, it's very different when you start looking at the reality of the situation, which is, yes, love is about satisfying each other's needs, including emotional needs. Love is about authentic desire for well-being of another individual, not just yours. So there's always this component in love, and being open about it, being honest about it, can make things quite awkward in the beginning, which is good, actually, because every time we move into a direction of greater honesty, things get a little awkward, and it's very good. It's actually very good. So because nonviolent communication is a much greater level of honesty, that's also why it works so well. You see, Marshall Rosenberg, I think the last name was. I think he was writing. He wrote that, and he claimed that that even if you use it completely unilaterally, right, and actually if you're using it correctly, you cannot expect or demand another person to use it also. So if you use it correctly, then you use it to communicate with another person, regardless of how they communicate with you. So they may communicate with you violently, and you still use NVC. That's the real NVC, right? So even if you use it unilaterally, it's still a very good communication tool, both for you and for the other person, precisely because it's more honesty. Because deep down below, we're all the same. Deep down below, we're all humans. So it is simply much easier to relate. If another person tells you honestly about their emotional experience, if they ask you, not demand or order you, but ask you to do something to make it easy for them, then it is much easier to relate. It is much easier to relate to. Marshall said one time, a quote which I really like, because it's very true and wise quote. He said that if you put your giraffe ears, so if you really look at what people say to each other, that they almost always say one of two things. It's either please or thank you. So it's like, for example, when someone is angry with you, or even speaking to you in a very violent way, they actually saying, like, please don't hurt me, like, please don't speak about this and that way because it hurts me, or like, please don't do this because it reminds me of how I was hurt before, and every time that I see that, I'm getting hurt. They just do not know that themselves oftentimes, because they in so much pain that they cannot stop and look inside and understand that that's what's really going on, leave alone admit it. But that's actually what they're saying. And so nonviolent communication is a wonderful tool because it makes you stop, look inside, and admit it. And with regards to, like, okay, but if there's incomplete enlightenment, there is no emotional needs. Well, it doesn't actually matter, because there's nothing worse than you can do than try to simulate enlightenment. You can say in complete enlightenment, there is no anger either. But if you're going to take this stance and try to avoid anger every time when it arises in meditation, in life, on psychedelic trips, or in any other method or form of practice that you're using, if you're going to try to avoid it, and then you're never going to get enlightened. So it's the same thing here. Nothing that is still denied, nothing that is still rejected, can be let go of. So no emotional need can possibly be transcended before it is admitted, before it is acknowledged. Acknowledging this need and acknowledging the pain that this need arises from cannot be worked around, and they're deeply interconnected. They're deeply related. Both must happen. One cannot happen without the other. So that's why all attempts to arrive into the enlightened state by studying the attributes or characteristics of an enlightened state are doomed to failure. And that's why the most important practice is about what's going on now. It's about being completely and absolutely honest about what is going on now. What are you feeling now? If you can, ask yourself the question of why you're feeling it, what would you like to change, and exploring the direct experience of the pain that leads you to suffering. So all of this is the only path that can take you there, because that's what's happening now. What is happening now is what's happening now. And what you will be and how you will be when you completely enlighten is just a fantasy about the future that you want to conform to. So from that perspective, nonviolent communication is one of the best techniques, actually, that I have come across. Okay, So Base says, hey Artem, can you talk about the I am everything shift when it dawns? I know it becomes normal after a while, but it seems important and like my heart is longing for it. I'm not sure what you would like me to say exactly. Yeah, this is too vague a question, actually. I mean, would you like me to describe how beautiful it is so that you that you satisfy your longing somehow? But that's a description, you know. Uh, okay, yeah, I'm not sure about that. White Red says, "Hi Artem, hi. How does self-realization relate to your levels of dreaming, and at what level would one experience self-realization?" So self-realization proper is in my language, and again in my language, right? So different teachers, different traditions, they have different languages. So in my language, self-realization proper is Satchitananda. So it's the you're God, the being of infinite love and compassion. You're the slave of love. So that's the deepest oneness. That's the oneness. So there is also the witnessing consciousness, and that's the level prior. Ali says, "Hi Artem, I want to know your view on surrender, especially in difficult and important stages of life where you don't know which direction to go or what decision to make. How does surrender help us?" Okay, that's a good question. So an important distinction in spirituality is that you don't necessarily surrender to the external circumstances, you surrender to yourself. You surrender to how you feel about it, you surrender to what you really want. That's why life kind of becomes easy and effortless in enlightenment, because you're no longer confused about what you want, and you don't pursue things that don't bring you happiness, thinking that this is what you really want. And it like a good example, for example, is that you don't pursue people who don't want you, for example, which is a source of an untold amount of suffering for many, many people. Uh, so when you look at surrender this way, the confusion about what to do, about what direction to take in life, happens from not knowing what it is that is really giving you pleasure and satisfaction, and what you really want to do in life, and what only will give you more suffering because you think that it will give you more pleasure and satisfaction, but then it won't. So basically, what actions you still perform in self-rejection out of self-deceit, and the more suffering there's still in your unconscious, the harder it is to differentiate, to distinguish, and the more confused you can get about certain things. So again, it's kind of difficult to give advice in a general way, but in general way, I would give the following two kind of techniques to try to like see through the confusion. And the first one is, be very, very honest, be very brutally honest with yourself about what you want. That's one. Even if it gets very emotional, when you answer these questions to yourself honestly, but be honest, and it can be a very fruitful exploration. And you can ask yourself also additional questions of like, why do you want that? And keep unraveling it with more and more whys. And the other question, and the other technique is, when you're about to make a decision, you can imagine the consequences of your decision. So imagine it's like, for example, working out, or imagine it not working out, or there's an alternative decision. Imagine it works out, imagine it doesn't work out. So imagine the best thing that could happen, imagine the worst thing that could happen. And look at your and investigate the bodily response to it. So the less you are afraid, basically, of the consequences of a wrong decision, the clearer you will see whether you actually want this decision or you only think that you want it because you're running some program, you're operating under some false belief. So that's what someone else wants you to do, society wants you to do. You only think you want it. So when you are doing what you truly want, then you're not afraid of the consequence of what you're doing. You see, that's the paradox, because that's what it means to be free. That's what it means to only do what you want. To not be it's the same as not being afraid of the consequence. So I hope it helps. Okay, let's see. Bogdan says, can you speak about a cognitive overload? After years of meditation, it's pretty effortless to stay focused on task at work for a long time without distraction. But downside is that the mind often can't stop solving tasks after a workday finish. Sometimes I can't sleep the whole night because of this. Yeah, so it's the matter of lack of balance. So it means that there are still some attachments in the mind to solving a particular task. It's not that, you see, it's not that thinking about the task itself is a problem. You see, it's the fact that you present it as a problem that proves to me that it's a problem. So it means that you would want to turn it off, but you can't. You see, if it's not that the mind is an extraordinary potent problem-solving machine. The mind that does not produce any thought is not a goal in spirituality. Actually, there's nothing wrong with thinking. So it can continue thinking about the problem and give you some solutions. But if it's not overdoing it, then it's not a problematic thing. It is not something that is tiring you. It is not something that you would like to turn off. If those things are present, that it means that there is a lack of balance. It means that there is some obsessiveness that is left in the mind. So you would like to rest, but you can't, right? So, and as usual, it's all predicated on the continued existence of the ego, on the emotional aversion and emotional clinging to specific social situations. So it's actually all quite social, and it goes away slowly with years, with continued meditation practice and illuminating and dissolving more and more of the conditions. So the completely enlightened state is a state of balance between work and rest. You see, so if you feel in your experience that it's not balanced, like you like overdo work or you overdo rest, then the journey continues, and you will see deeper the causes of that. So it's kind of, every ego is a little bit bipolar. It can be a lot bipolar. It can be a little bit bipolar, but this kind of imbalanced activities all balance themselves out later down the path. Maxime, did your reaction to tickling evolve in the path? Okay, I don't know. Please don't test it. It's curious to me, the mixed reaction I have to, both painful, pleasurable. I don't know. I don't want to find out. Okay, Unity is saying, would there be a way of combining money and GDP as well as ecology? Why couldn't it be together? Yeah, actually, of course it could be together. It's just that we are extraordinarily competitive, and the reason that we're competitive is because of the ego. So we compete with each other, forgetting a much bigger goal and forgetting much bigger threats too. In the meantime, and this dynamic is very universal, and you can see it in the whole humanity, the politics of individual countries, and then you can see it in families. You can see it in human relationships, competing with each other, being in conflict with each other, forgetting a grander reality, which is, for example, that there's a much more competition and rift between everyone else and this particular family, for example. So the ego is always confused. The ego is always confused by its own pain, and we're confused about who our enemies are and who our friends are. And so yes, I mean, of course, in general, it could be done. The problem with our economy isn't as much how it's structured, but how, even though that's of course a huge problem, and we can improve it in a lot of ways, but how our minds are structured. You see, so that's also why we're seeing the reason leaving politics, because actually reason is a wonderful tool. When if you do politics mostly manipulating other people and playing on their emotions, if the form of competition, political competition, is character assassination, the main form of political competition, then it is very hard for reason to make its way there. So that's why we're seeing also the eradication of reason from the political sphere. But of course, yes, we could make a lot of moves towards the economy, laws, and rules that are much more based on reason than passions and competitions, but it requires reason to make its way back into the political and social dialogue. That's the problem that we currently face with. So it's not like capitalism had nowhere left to develop. So it could potentially develop to better and better society. And if you want to look at if you want to get an idea of how it looks like take a look at European Nordic countries. It's not like they don't have social problems, but they have certainly their economic model have certainly developed beyond what we have in the US when it comes to its ability to satisfy the needs of the majority of the population. And so yes, of course, it could develop way above that. It could develop much further beyond than this. What prevents it from development is the space of consciousness of population, generally speaking. And unfortunately, the less reason we have in political dialogue, and the more confrontational, manipulative, and emotional, passionate our debates are, the more they're based on posturing and pronouncing moral superiority, and the less they are based on trying to understand and relate, the further away we are moving from those targets. So, but yeah, I mean, most definitely. Okay, let's see. Reddish. Okay, for my students, well, you probably can't because you're on YouTube. Okay, never mind. Can my unfolding be limited by my amount of engagement with society? It seems as though I'm not giving myself opportunities to be sad, joyful, scared, excited that don't exist in practical. Yes, of course. Like as I said many times, there's a place where there's a moment where solitary practice can actually be limiting, and if you go and actively engage in society, it will touch you in a much deeper way in all sorts of places. So I generally encourage my students to integrate back in society as soon as possible. I mean, to the way that the suffering allows it, because sometimes it could be just too much. It could be too long, but generally speaking, yeah, that's a good idea. How can I better acknowledge my anger at another person while they're present without taking it out on them somehow? Okay, I don't have much time, unfortunately. I'll have to skip. Yeah, I have a bunch of other questions, so I'll have to. Unfortunately, I'll have to skip them. And Megana, Max, hi. I brought you for a little while, but I won't be able to speak to you. I just wanted to say
It's
hi.
okay, brother. It's okay. My voice is gone anyway.
Oh, are you sick?
I am a bit sick, and I went out yesterday with my girlfriend to dance a bit, and it had been a very long time since I went into a club, so it was very strange.
Oh yeah, I can hear it. Yeah, well, yes. Please get better. Get better soon, my
It was
friend.
fun.
And
It was
I'll
fun.
talk to you next time.
And
Well, thank you. So
yeah,
we'll
I'll see
have
you around.
yes, thank you. We also have Megana. Hi, Megana.
Hi, how are you, Artem?
Good. I have like 10 minutes left. If
Yeah,
you
yeah. I mean, I don't. I was not. I was
you
not
were just
hoping
listening.
to ask for a question or anything.
Oh, okay. So if you're just listening, it's actually you can just watch it on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, and you can just submit comments. So this is like for guests who want to
Right.
appear on it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Harsha says, I want money. I will win the lottery. Good luck. I wish you best of luck with that. So let's see. Thoughts on the Mind Illuminated as Path to Freedom. I actually have not read The Mind Illuminated, at least not in its entirety. So I can't really comment. Do you have to satisfy all your desires and dreams before enlightenment, or can you unfold it all through practice and psychedelics? Both. I mean, the latter, all desires in the dream state, the false and authentic desires, all desires in the dream state do not bring you happiness, actually. So they go away through one of two ways. So you either satisfy them and then realize that did make you happy, or you realize that you will never satisfy them, because you're not going to live forever. So you will never satisfy them. And then with this realization, you will also understand that you didn't need them to be happy. Both are unpleasant. You see, if you think that like realizing, okay, I'm like already 40 years old, I will never be like an NBA player or something like that. If you think parting with your dream is unpleasant, try fulfilling it and then realizing that it didn't change anything, that's also unpleasant. So both are unpleasant, and it can happen two ways. So strictly speaking, you can do all of that with practice in psychedelics. Practice meditation, psychedelics, whatever other forms of practice. I mean, psychedelics also is a form of practice. It's not like a panacea. It's just very intense meditation for people that don't know that that's what I say all the time. So be careful with them. It's not like a pill that you just take and everything goes away. No, it's quite the opposite. So yeah, you can, strictly speaking, you can dissolve the full self with practice alone, but it's unpractical actually for most people. Like, who wants to go to a monastery and like spend 10 years meditating or something like this? You can combine it with living, which is what most people do. What is the best beginner meditation as basis for awakening? Actually, this is my weakness. I don't have meditation videos. I plan to make some next year in 2025, including meditation for beginners. Actually, pretty much don't speak very much, a lot for beginners. But for beginners, I recommend two forms of meditation. It's concentration meditation on breath and self-compassion meditation. So I don't have the time to go into depth about that, but sooner or later I'll make some meditation videos. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Is enlightenment compatible with being material satisfied? Yes, of course. My eyes are attracted to upwards like a magnet since I started doing do nothing meditation. Any suggestions? What's wrong with that? Is there any trouble with that? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you do nothing meditation and you feel like your eyes are rolling upwards, just let them. For as long as it doesn't bring you any discomfort, just let them. Just meditate like this. Let whatever happens to you in meditation happen. If it just happens naturally, spontaneously, let it happen. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you feel like there is something wrong with it, tell us what. Okay, what else? Yeah, unfortunately I'm running out of time. So we are also doing private satsangs on our Discord forum. But in order to join our Discord forum, you have to have a Discord profile with your first real name and a real picture. And also, quite possibly, I don't know who you are, I might ask you to schedule a one-on-one session with me. So we're moving our Discord server to the server where specifically my students socialize and help each other, practicing specifically the method that I teach, which is which can be practiced both in meditation and psychedelic trips and in life, which is at every single moment you ask yourself, how am I experiencing whatever am I experiencing? Not as a way to get a description, but as a way to approach your direct sensate experience closer. And so if you wish to practice it this way, and if you resonate with my teachings, please join the Discord forum, and we will we'll also have we'll have a satsang there next Sunday. All right, well, that's it for today. We have one last guest I will bring up stage because I don't think that I spoke to him before. Vayo Laan, how do I know?
Hey, that's a user. My name is Dami. I don't know why.
What's your name?
Dami. That's Dami.
Dami. Hi,
Yes.
Dami.
Hi. We spoke last year.
Oh, we did. Oh, I think I remember.
Yeah, I was talking about my emotions, my delusions and all that, and you helped me walk through my motivations for all those things. Yeah. So sorry I came late. I
That's okay.
kind of hopped on a bit late. So I've been having so it's been a very chaotic journey for me since from last year up till now. It's like there's been a lot of reality check. There's been a lot of things I've been avoiding. One of them, my upbringing. I grew up around a lot of unhealthy people, and while I was passive through it all, I ran away from all of it, thinking that all I needed to do was run away. It wasn't until recently that I'm saying that those things I was trying to run away from, they left their mark on me, and all of them are now manifesting. I'm seeing a lot of things about myself. I mean, they've always been there, but it's just coming to surface like, oh, I'm this terrible person. Oh, I'm a dishonest person. Oh, I'm this and that. So it's at first I was fighting it. I mean, people around me would tell me like, "Oh, you do this, you do that. You Why did you lie there? Why did you say something that you don't mean?" And each time I keep trying to defend it, like, oh, I didn't have control. It's my condition. It's my these things just happen. I don't have control over them. But I'm saying now that I do have control. It's just like I didn't see that I had the control. Now it's very difficult. Like sometimes I will just find myself thinking thoughts. I'm like, oh, why am I thinking about this? Why am I uptight about this? Why don't I want to say my mind in this situation? I just find myself doing those things again. I'm like, what am I doing? So so my question is, I've been trying to like use my awareness. I did not have any form of self-awareness, but right now I'm able to catch myself when those things are happening. But it's like those conditionings are too strong. They are like they are my identity. That
Yeah.
I'm now finding that maybe I found that maybe what I had to do is like give myself a new set of ideals to live by. For instance, I did some I wrote a few things for my some new values: accountability, integrity, compassion, um, loyalty, prioritization, self-love. Because I realized that in order to change, in order to be the person I want to be, in order to be someone who is free of my conditions, I needed to be able to love myself, which means love where I was coming from,
Yes.
accept my past instead of running away from it.
Yes.
But I've been running. So I needed to accept my journey, like my journey is mine. Instead of comparing my journey to those
Mhm.
of others, I needed to accept like they have their own journey, I have my own.
Yes.
So I was thinking, so what I do every morning, I wake up, I read all these values and pass it to myself, repeat it, visualize, and I'm thinking like, am I reconditioning myself?
Okay, good question. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing. Uh, Everything you said, I'm sure a lot of people will be able to relate to it. You honest, sincere, beautiful sharing. I'm sure that a lot of people enjoyed it because it's a very similar process for everyone, and was quite the same for me. Now, with regards to recondition yourself by kind of aspiring to some sort of ideal set of values that naturally and effortlessly manifest in enlightenment. Yes, there is a danger, and it actually will happen. The question here is only, uh, do are those new ideals and values help you uncover the false values and help you to illuminate and deal with the false values that do not help you, and the pain, the emotional pain that these values also attach to, uh, or not. So if the answer is yes, then it's still going to move you towards the right direction, even though at times you will actually misinterpret and overcompensate on those ideal values as well. That's the danger, and it will always happen, because you see, the ego is always looking for a set of instructions. It's very difficult for the ego to be spontaneous. So even if we set the highest values, like for example, truth, honesty, justice, then then you will, of course, sometimes make a mistake of uh, taking this value and misapplying it. Like for example, honesty without compassion is cruelty,
Yeah,
or justice. How many murders have been done and wars have been fought in the name of justice, right?
it's true. Yeah.
So, so the values of kindness and compassion can also be misinterpreted as, I have to be kind to this person even though he is mistreating me. And you might find yourself being kind to another person while actually being cruel towards yourself, and then later you will realize it and cry your tears about it, and
That happens.
so it. it's okay. You see, if you feel like this is something that you need, do that. The only question here is it deepening your own self reflection, and is it opening your hearts to yourself and launching you deeper into this journey of self-love on average? You see, so if let's say on average you find yourself then adhering to these values, makes your heart open, makes you more self-loving, makes you more resilient and less afraid of the pain that comes up with the inner investigation, do that. Yes, move there, even though at times, maybe sometimes you will overshoot. So what? You will deal with that later. So if it helps you to deal with whatever is that you're dealing now, do that, and then whatever formulas will be remaining and attached to that, you'll deal with it later.
Yeah, there is one concept I have. It's under compassion. It says, I will seek to understand rather than judge.
Yes,
I,
that's a very good one.
I, yeah, I see that in whenever I'm
It's a
talking to
beautiful
others,
one. That's a great
whenever I'm
one.
whenever I'm talking to anyone, if they say something, I'm not trying to understand them. Or if you say, "Oh, you made an error," I'm like, "Oh, you think I'm not good enough?" So I'm always that concept is teaching me to like listen.
Yes.
And then when I feel like, oh, I'm comparing myself, for them to point this out, that means they are better than me. Then my value on self love comes and it says, I will honor my journey and I will honor my journey and not compare, because my journey is mine and mine alone and everybody else has theirs. So I can't be, we are on different journeys. So it kind of like counteracts my whole um condition. Is like, it's like cancel. So I wasn't sure, like, is it canceling it out or is it giving me something that I would now
it,
be, because I
it
don't
will
want to recondition myself. I
it will
just,
certainly like, you know it's like removing a wedge with a wedge. I mean, if if adopting some like ideals which you could say are rigid in some form can help you get rid of an even more rigid ideals, then it's good. The ideal of understanding is a very, very good one, because it doesn't only apply to other people, but it applies to you as well.
yeah.
Same thing, instead of judging you, understand you, right?
Mm.
And if you go with this attitude towards yourself and towards others of understanding rather than judging, you will invariably bring up to explore quite a lot of stuff inside of you, because there will be people that will be difficult for you to understand.
Yes.
In order for you to understand them, you'll have to relate to them emotionally, and this can be a gut-wrenching experience, for example.
Mm.
Or some parts of yourself, precisely because they're very hurt and wounded, might be difficult to understand. And in trying, just like with this other person, in shooting for, well, not shooting, uh, in going for deep understanding, you will invariably also uncover the pain that needs to
Mm.
be also felt and understood, that was preventing the understanding. So,
That's very,
so yes, of course. You see, it's like with meditation. Like, for example, we can say like enlightenment is meditation, relaxation, blah 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 blah. But when you're just beginning to meditate, it may be first viewed as discipline, as
yeah.
difficult discipline.
Yeah, when I started, it was like, oh, I have to meditate at 1 p.m. every day. But now lately, it just feels like I no longer need to keep the discipline. It's like, oh, it's beside the point anyway.
Yeah,
But yeah,
my point is that like we can say enlightenment is not discipline. Enlightenment is relaxation. So I mean, how come meditation can be viewed as discipline? Well, sometimes, for the mind that needs structure, a better, more healthy structure is better than unhealthy structure. So if you need ideals, an enlightened ideals, the good ideals, the ideals of kindness, compassion, and understanding, are much better than and you know that you can test that by the fact that when you try following it, you start seeing more of your own suffering. Like, for example, one time I was asked the question, is there such a thing as enlightened behavior? And I said, yes, of course. Don't try. The main rule is this: like, don't try to inflict any actual inconvenience upon another person, like, be it, physically, by hurting them or making their life difficult, doing something to them to so that they have a much more difficult life, as a response to emotional inconvenience that this person inflicted upon you. So if they didn't actually do anything bad to you, but they just said something that made you offended or feel bad, or like, don't ever turn it into revenge when you actually do something bad to them. And if everybody, for example, just tried to adopt this rule, it would be a very difficult life, because we're not used to this. Like, we're used to, okay, so you hurt my feelings. Now I'm gonna, like, do something, call the manager, I'm gonna try to fire you. I'm just gonna, like, do something nasty to you, or like whatever, and that would, like, if everyone tried to do this, they will invariably, just like with NVC, that's another method, they will invariably have to start looking at how much painful things that propel them to this behavior again and again and again are routinely circling in their body, in their consciousness. So again, it's some sort of method, some sort of discipline, yes, but it moves you deeper, but moves you closer. So there's no, you can't just, like, take this very absolutist approach of, like, no rules, no discipline, no
that was
idea.
what I wanted to ask you next.
For as long as it helps move you deeper, for as long as it helps getting to know yourself better and understand yourself better, that's good practice.
Okay, because I spoke with you. I think we had a couple of chats. That's over on Discord. That was last year, where I was talking to you about awakenings. They are not abiding awakenings and all that. And I realized that my sense of my awareness has grown. Like, I have a lot of peace in my heart. Like, I can very well be at peace, but then I keep trying, like, okay, this will help my life this will help me become a better person. And then I was like, why do I want to be a better person? And then I realized it's all an egoic condition. And I'm like, okay, how do I?
Okay, let me. I'm sorry. I want to mention something, and then I have to go because I don't have
Okay.
much time. But yes, I mean, you will find in spirituality that all of those notions, don't try to be a better person, and I say that myself. Don't try to be a better person. But here's the thing about being a better person. If you're trying to become a better person compared to others, then it's fundamentally competitive, and it can lead you astray. But a better person, a better version of yourself to you, is the version of yourself that hurts less. It's a more honest version of yourself. It's the version of yourself that lies less to yourself, and it just so coincides, because that's how reality is structured, is that it's a much kinder version. It's a much more compassionate version towards both yourself and others. It is a much more loving version, you see, because love and truth are one and the same. Love and authenticity and honest, it's much more authentic version, you see. So this is kind of the version of better, more truthful, more authentic, more real.
Sorry, Artem, I lost your audio for a second. Sorry.
I'm sorry, but I don't have the time. I really need to wrap it up. But then maybe you can rewatch it on YouTube. But thank you.
Can you
very
hear
much.
me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. But
I can't hear you.
Okay, so I hope that you will guess to rewatch it on YouTube, Dami. Unfortunately, I need to.
Okay, I hear you now. I hear you now. Sorry,
Okay,
I
I was
wasn't
saying that you
hearing.
can rewatch it on YouTube later, but I really need to wrap it up. Yeah. So,
Okay.
thank you, Dami. Thank you for coming. It was great talking to you.
Thank
And
you
yeah,
so
you
much.
can also continue the conversation. You can schedule a private meeting with me or continue the conversation in the Discord forum. But I have to go. Okay, Thomas. I also see your questions. Unfortunately, I don't have time to answer them today. So a couple of weeks from now, or on the Discord server, or in a private session. But unfortunately, you're kind of late to the party. Anyway, I wasn't planning it to be that long, but I had some great questions. And thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So there's been 40 people watching this satsang today, which is wonderful. I'm very grateful to all of you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you. It was great talking to you. Best of luck to you on the spiritual path. Once again, join my Discord, support me on Patreon, schedule sessions with me, and you can also see me in person. I live in California. So thank you. Best of luck to you. Love you all.